I die on a Tuesday in the back of a city bus with $41 in my bank account and no one waiting up for me. 34 years old, and that is the entire accounting of my life. It fits on the back of a receipt. $41. A rented room with a window that won't close all the way. A phone 2 generations out of date because I could never justify the upgrade. A job where I am the smartest man in every meeting and the lowest paid man on every floor. I'd like to tell you I was unlucky. I wasn't. I was robbed, slowly, politely, with handshakes and warm smiles over a whole decade, and I let it happen because I never understood the one thing the men who robbed me understood in their bones. The world does not pay you for what a thing is truly worth. It pays you for what you can make people believe it's worth. I learned that lesson exactly once, and it killed me. I was 24, a junior buyer at a food company called Sterling, and I walked into a glass conference room with an idea I'd built on my own time. A brand of wild, raw, single origin honey, sourced straight from small mountain producers, sold as something rare and clean and real to people in cities who were just starting to ache for exactly that. I had the sourcing mapped. I had the story written. I was holding the whole future of an entire category in my hands, years before anyone else could see it coming. The executives smiled. They told me it was a charming concept. They thanked me for my initiative, walked me to the elevator, and inside of a year, Sterling Foods launched a premium wild honey line that became one of the most profitable products in the company's history, with another man's name on it and not 1 cent of it in my account. I complained once. They moved me to a worse department. So I learned to stop complaining, and I spent the next 10 years watching my own idea grow on grocery shelves, riding the late bus home past billboards for the thing I'd invented, getting quieter and smaller and more bitter, until one cold Tuesday my heart simply stopped between two stops, and the last thing I thought as the dark closed in was the name of the town I'd clawed my way out of and sworn I'd never go back to. Hollow Pine. A dying little snow town high in the mountains, where the mine had closed and the young people had gone, and the families who stayed sold a hard year's harvest to a man who cheated them, because he was the only buyer who'd drive up the pass. The place that taught me, long before Sterling ever did, that the world takes everything and gives nothing back. I closed my eyes on a bus, broke and forgotten and almost 40. I opened them in my childhood bedroom, and I am 17 years old, and it is a winter morning a long, long time ago. I know it instantly, the way you know your own hands in the dark. The ceiling above me is the water-stained pine of my boyhood, every knot of it carved into a part of my memory I thought I'd burned out years back. The blanket is the rough wool my mother made before she passed. My body, I sit up fast, and it answers fast, light and whole and untired, a body that has never once ridden 1,000 late buses or swallowed a decade of its own words. Through the frost on the window, the mountains stand white and enormous against a pale early sky, exactly as they stood the year I was 17, and the air slipping under the bad window frame smells like wood smoke and cold stone, and underneath it all, the faint gold smell of my father's honey. My father, who on this morning in this impossible second life is alive. And there is something else wrong with the room, something my modern eyes catch before my mind can name it. On the desk sits a chunky little flip phone with rubber buttons. Beside it, a boxy laptop the size of a serving tray. A disc player. A spiral notebook instead of a tablet. The small machines of a world that hasn't happened yet. And I understand, with a jolt that is almost funny, exactly when I am. I am back at the very beginning of the Hain Konmuis, years before the small glowing rectangle in everyone's pocket rewires the entire planet. Before a photo sharing app most people haven't downloaded, yet quietly becomes the most powerful selling tool in human history. Before order it online and we'll ship it to your door stops being a novelty and becomes simply how the world buys everything. Before the word artisanal is worth its weight in gold. I lived through all of it, every wave, and I am standing at the shore a full decade before the first one breaks. Then the chime comes, soft and clear, like a struck glass, from no direction at all because it is sounding inside my own skull, and a panel of pale blue light unfolds in the cold air in front of me, where no light has any business being. Yoshun system Inidasing. Host Leo Hart. Age Murbei. Merchant rank F. A second life has been granted. The first was wasted. This one you will build. Skill unlocked appraisal. Perceive the true grade and true market value of any good. I should be afraid. A glowing window has opened in my bedroom and is speaking to me in numbers. But a man who has already died once does not frighten the way other men do, and what I feel staring at those cold blue letters is not fear. It's something I haven't felt in so long I barely recognize it. Hope. Sharp and terrible and almost unbearable. I reach out and touch the panel. It ripples like the surface of still water, soft under my fingertip, and does not vanish. I have a whole decade of the future folded up inside my head, every trend, every crash, every product that will rise, and every company that will fall. And now, hanging in the air of my dead mother's house, I have a second weapon. A thing that sees the true worth of what's in front of it. A thing that does, for objects, exactly what no one ever did for me. It tells the truth about value. Downstairs, a chair scrapes across a plank floor, and a voice calls up the stairs, rough, tired, frayed at the edges in a way that puts a crack straight through my chest, because I know that voice, and I know how few mornings of it I have left if this life runs the way the last one did. Leo. You up? Mueller's truck is on the path already. Get the honey crates down to the square before he sets up, or we'll be dead last in line again. Mueller. And just like that, the cold operational calm I learned across a wasted lifetime settles over my 17-year-old shoulders because I remember, with the awful clarity of a thing relived, exactly what day this is. This is the day Hank Mueller robs my father. He robs the whole town every winter in broad daylight in the public square with a warm smile and a rigged scale, and in 20 years not one soul in Hollow Pine ever once stands up in that square and stops him. That changes this morning. But first I make myself slow down. Selection taught me that, the real lesson under all the others. When everything is chaos and your heart is screaming go, you stop, you breathe, and you take inventory of what you actually have. So I stand in my cold socks in my dead mother's house, and I take inventory. I have a body that is 17 and strong. I have a mind that is 34 and has already watched this entire decade play out. I have a system that tells the truth about worth. And I have, downstairs, a father who is alive, and down the hall a sister who is still small, and a debt in the kitchen drawer that is going to take everything from us in 3 months unless I move. It is, I realize, more than I have ever had in either life. I pull on my father's old flannel and go down the stairs, and I make myself look at the kitchen the way I'll need to look at everything now, not with grief, but with appraisal. My father, Tom Hart, stands at the counter wrapping jars of honey in old newspaper, and he is younger than I let myself remember, big-shouldered and going gray, with hands cracked from 40 winters of work. He glances up and frowns. You look like you've seen a ghost, son. I have. I'm wearing one. I'm fine, Dad. My voice comes out steadier than I expect. How many jars this year? 40 of the high meadow. A flicker of pride breaks through the tiredness, and it nearly undoes me. Good stuff, Leo. From the snowline hives up where nobody else's bees can live. Best season we've had in years. The pride dims. Mueller will give us 4, maybe 450 if he's feeling kind. It's something. It goes to the bank. The bank. $42,000. The foreclosure notice in the second drawer that he thinks I haven't seen, the one with the date on it that I spent a whole lifetime trying to forget. I pick up one of the jars and hold it to the gray morning light from the window, and the system answers before I've even finished forming the question. Appraisal, Hollow Pine High Meadow Snow Honey. Grade S, rare. Monofloral, high altitude, uncontaminated, hand harvested. True market value, Mocham $2 to Mocham $4 per jar at premium urban retail, rising sharply this decade. Local offered price, Boncham $4. Margin stolen by intermediary, Chinmisao percent. I knew the number. I've known it for 20 years. But there's a difference between knowing it as old bitterness and seeing it written in cold light over my father's honest hands. Seeing in hard figures exactly how much is taken from this man every winter while he says thank you for it. It doesn't make me angry. I'm past angry. It makes me certain. Dad, I say, and I set the jar down gently. Don't sell to Mueller today. Not yet. He stops rapping. Leo, one day. Give me one day. If I'm wrong, we crawl back to Mueller tomorrow and take whatever he offers, and I never say another word about it as long as I live. I hold his eyes, and I let him see something in my face a 17-year-old's face shouldn't be able to hold. But I don't think I'm wrong. I think this honey is worth 30 times what that man pays, and I think I can prove it before the sun goes down. He stares at me a long moment, this tired man weighing a lifetime of hard sense against the strange certainty of his son. And because he is exhausted, and because I am offering him a single day of hope in a winter that's offered him none, he sets the jar down. One day, he says quietly. Don't make me regret it, son. I won't, I say. Not this time. The town square of Hollow Pine is a strip of stamped snow between the boarded-up mine office and Sullivan's Diner, and on collection day the whole town turns out, because Hank Mueller is the only buyer who climbs the pass, and what he pays is the only cash these families see until the thaw. He's exactly as I remember him, down to the good wool coat he buys with our stolen margin. A big, soft man with a warm smile and small, wet eyes, standing beside a battered scale and a truck with another company's name on the door, greeting people by name as he gets ready to rob them. The farmers line up in the cold with their crates, honey, winter cheese, dried herbs, jarred pears, the whole hard yield of a mountain year, and they wait their turn to be cheated, and they say thank you when it's done, because that's how it's always been. Tom Hart, Mueller calls warmly as my father sets our crates down, and young Leo. Good season up at the snow line. 40 jars of the haimidao, my father says, trying to hide the hope. The good stuff. The good stuff, Mueller agrees, lifting a jar onto his scale, squinting at the needle like a man performing a great and reluctant kindness. Truth is, Tom, market's soft this year. City don't want what it used to. Honey's 4 a jar. I can stretch to $4.50 for you on account of we go back. $4.50. For grade S monofloral snow honey that I have personally watched sell under a stolen brand for $140 a jar to people who'll never once climb a mountain. My father's shoulders begin their old, familiar slump, the slump of a man about to thank someone for robbing him, and he starts to nod. Don't, I say. The word carries clean across the square. Heads turn. Conversations stop. My father blinks at me, and Muller's warm smile holds, but his small, wet eyes sharpen on me. Your scale reads heavy, mister. Mueller, I say, walking forward across the snow. It pulls the needle back about 2 ounces on every way. You've run it that way for years. 2 ounces a jar, 200 families, every winter. That's not a soft market. That's a second house. The square goes utterly silent. Somewhere a dog stops barking. Mueller's smile doesn't move, but something cold settles behind it. That's an ugly thing to say in front of your neighbors, boy. You calling me a thief? I'm saying test the scale. I pick up our jar, set it on his platform, watch the needle settle, then lift it and set it back a hand's width left of center, and the needle jumps a clear 2 ounces. Low sound moves through the crowd, not shock, recognition. Every person here has felt in their gut for 20 years that Muller's math never quite added up, and not one of them has ever been able to prove it. Calibrated to read short, I say, loud enough for all of them. It's not broken, Mr. Mueller. It's working exactly the way you built it. Calm, Muller drops the warmth entirely now and turns to my father, his voice flat and hard. Control your boy. Or I drive this truck back down the mountain empty and I don't come back up till next winter, and then you can explain to your families why the harvest rotted in the cellar. He lets it land on the whole square, the old threat, the only one he's ever needed. I'm the only buyer who'll make this drive. Everybody remember that. And there it is, the chain that has held this town on its knees for a generation. He is the only road to the city. Refuse him, and your year's work rots in the snow. In my first life, that threat worked. Every winter, it worked. Every face in this square turned down to study its own boots, and my father took the 450, and that was simply how the world was. This time, I don't look at my boots. I turn my back on Muller entirely and face the people, the Sullivans from the diner, old one-armed bear who keeps the snowline hives, 40 families with frost in their collars and 20 years of being robbed in their memory, and I don't beg them. Begging is for people with nothing to offer. I have the whole next decade to offer. He pays you $4 a jar, I say, and sells this exact honey in the city for over 100. I can prove it today. I'm not asking you to trust me. You don't know me. I've been the quiet heart kid my whole life. I'm asking one thing that costs you nothing. Hold your crates. 1 week. Don't load that truck. Give me 7 days and I'll come back to this square with a number that makes every one of you sick you ever said thank you to this man. For a moment, something lifts through the crowd. A maybe. And then a lazy voice cuts it off at the knees. And who's gonna buy it, Hart? You? Brett Hale. 17, leaning against the only new car in Hollow Pine, a car his father bought him, in a jacket that costs more than my father makes in a month. In my first life, this boy made my teenage years a slow humiliation, then grew up to inherit a freight empire built on towns exactly like this one, squeezed exactly like this. He smirks, and a couple of people laugh along out of pure old habit. Your daddy's gonna drive 40 jars of honey to the city and get rich, Brett says, playing to the square. My dad says towns like this are already dead. They just don't know it yet. I look at him, and I feel the old sting reach for me, and find nothing to grab. I'm 34 inside. This boy is a child who hasn't yet done a single one of the things I'll never forgive him for. There's no power in his words anymore, and the absence of my flinch, the simple steadiness of a man who can't be touched by a boy, lands harder in that square than any comeback could. Yeah, Brett, I say, and I smile at him, a smile 17 years older than my face. I am. Quest Iswed. Sell the first batch direct with no intermediary. Reward. Capital. Skill. Silver Tongui. I don't take the town's crates. I won't gamble 200 families a year on my word. That trust has to be earned with a number, not a speech. I take only my own family's 40 jars, load them into my father's rattling truck, while half the square watches like I've lost my mind, and Muller calls after me, almost gently, "When you come crawling back, boy, the price is 4, not 450. That's the cost of the show. My father climbs into the cab beside me, gripping his knees. Leo. That was Hank Muller. We need that money for the bank. I know about the bank, Dad. $42,000. Trust me one day. There's a weekend market 2 hours down in Crestford. City people drive up for the scenery, for the authentic mountain feeling. I know exactly what those people are about to start spending money on. I just need a folding table and a few hours." He doesn't answer. He just watches the white pass unspool ahead, and I let him have his silence, because I remember this drive, and I remember being 17 and powerless in this same seat, and I am quietly savoring how completely different it feels to make it with a loaded weapon in my head. Crestford's market is a row of stalls in a plowed lot, and the people drifting through it are exactly who I knew they'd be. City money in good outdoor clothes, up for the weekend, hungry in a way they can't name for anything that feels real. In a few short years, they'll be the most powerful consumer force in the country, and they'll pay nearly anything for the words wild, raw, and small batch. Right now, they're just bored and looking, and nobody is selling them a story yet. I rent a folding table for $10. And because I can't quite stand to do this alone, and because some buried part of me has been aching since I opened my eyes this morning, I'd stopped at Sullivan's Diner on the way and asked Mia to come. Mia Sullivan. 17, sharp-eyed, quick-handed, the best artist this mountain ever made, and the only person in Hollow Pine who knows it, because she keeps it hidden in a sketchbook under the diner counter. In a dying town, wanting to be an artist is the kind of dream you keep where no one can step on it. In my first life, I left this town and left her in it, and she married a man who made her small, and I heard about it years later and did nothing, one of the many quiet failures I've come back to undo. She letters our sign in clean, strong capitals because her hands are better than mine. Hollow Pine, Wild Snow Honey. $20 a jar, she reads back, skeptical, beautiful in the cold with snow caught in her dark hair. Leo Muller pays your dad for. Nobody walking through a parking lot pays 20 for. The first jar sells in 90 seconds. A woman in a good coat tastes the sample I've spread on a chip of bread, and her eyes actually close, and she buys 6 without asking the price twice. Then her friend buys 4. Then a man who says he runs a cafe buys 10 and asks if I have a card and asks if I can ship, and I tell him soon, and I watch the future I lived bend quietly under my hands. The system chimes with every sale, a soft ladder of light only I can see. Sale plus $20. Sale plus more $20. Sale plus $20. Sale soba $1. Market confirms appraisal. Merchant rank F, $1 1,000. The cafe owner comes back a second time, this time with a friend, and buys 8 more jars, and asks again if I have a card, a website, anything. My customers are going to want to know where this came from. I tell him it's coming soon, and I take down his number in Mia's notebook, and I feel the shape of the future press against the present, because in this year a question like that is a courtesy, and in a few years it will be the whole game. A woman buys 2 jars as gifts and tells me her sister back east would lose her mind over something this real. Can I ship? Soon, I tell her to. Soon. Every can you ship is a door into the decade I already know is coming, and I am quietly writing down the names of the people standing at it first. My father stands at the end of the table, not saying a word, watching strangers hand his son real money for honey he was about to sell for $4.50 a jar, and I watch something happen in his face that I haven't seen in either of my lives. A tired man beginning, very cautiously, to believe. By early afternoon, the 40 jars are gone. $840 sits in the cash box, more than the farm clears in a full season of breaking my father's back for Hank Mueller, earned in a single afternoon off a single table in a parking lot. Mia stares at the empty crates, then the cash box, then me, with an expression I'm going to spend this whole second life trying to deserve. Leo, how did you know? You've never sold a thing in your life. You knew the exact price. You knew those people would pay it. How? I look up past the stalls at the white wall of the mountains, at the high snow line where my father's hives sit on land this whole town thinks is worthless, and I let myself feel, for one moment, the enormous and terrible gift of a second chance. Quest complete. Skill acquired. Silver Tongu. Your words carry weight. Trust comes easier. Deals close cleaner. New quest. Build a real business. Earn more. Hom 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 dola. I've just got a good memory, I tell her. And as we load the empty crates, a delivery truck grinds past the market on the main road in the gray slush, climbing toward the mountains, and on its side is a logo I'd know in any life, in any darkness, with my eyes shut. The logo from Mueller's borrowed truck, the logo that grew out of my stolen idea, the logo that ate 10 years of my life and left me with $41 and a cold bus seat. Stirling Foods. Not yet, I think, watching it climb toward a town that doesn't know it's sitting on a fortune. You don't know my name yet. You don't even know I exist. But you will. And this time, I'm the one who builds it first, a whole decade before you can see it coming. This time, the town that buried me is going to make me, and I'm going to make it. Every man who ever set a rigged scale in front of my father, every company that ever took an honest thing and stamped its own name on it, is going to learn exactly what these mountains are worth. I closed the cash box. $840. Day 1. 42,000 to go, and a whole decade I already know the shape of. I have never in 2 lifetimes felt so dangerous or so alive. $840 buys you exactly one thing in a town like Hollow Pine, a second look. By the next morning, the story has run through every kitchen on the mountain. No group chats, no posts, just the old telephone and fence line network that a small town runs on. The quiet heart boy emptied a table of honey at city prices, called Hank Mueller a thief to his face in the public square, proved the scale was rigged, and turned out to be right. In a town where nothing happens, and nothing changes, and nothing ever gets better, that is an earthquake. Old Bear comes to our porch before the sun is properly up, stamping snow off his boots. A big, silent man with one arm lost to the mine years back and 40 years of beekeeping in the other. He's kept the high meadow hives longer than I've been alive in both lives, and he's sold every drop of that impossible honey to Hank Mueller for $4 a jar the whole time. Heard you got 20 a jar down in Crestford, he says, by way of greeting. I got 20 for the first few. More for the last ones, once people saw others buying. He chews on that. Mueller pays me 4. I held my crates yesterday. Heard your speech. Figured a held crate costs me nothing. Got 200 jars sitting in my cellar. He fixes me with a look from under white eyebrows, trying to decide whether I'm a young fool or something he's never seen. So, you called the whole town to hold. Now what, boy? You can sell 40 jars off a card table. You can't sell 200 families worth that way. What's the actual plan? This is the moment. The system knows it too, the quest glowing quietly at the edge of my sight. Quest, build a real business. Earn more, hum dollar. Now, I say, we stop selling honey. Old Bear's face folds into a scowl. Behind me, in the doorway, my father makes a sound like a man punched. We stop selling honey, I go on, before either can argue, and we start selling hollow pine. A name. A label. A Story City people will pay for the way they pay for jewelry. Raw honey from Snowline, hives no other bees on earth can reach. 200 families, one mountain, hand-jarred, hand-numbered. The honey in the jar doesn't change at all, Bear. But the second it has a name and a face and a story, the price doesn't double. It triples, and then it triples again. I look at him. Your 200 jars. Partner with me. I front the labels, the table, the travel. We sell over Mueller's price and split the difference, 50-50. You risk nothing. If I fail, you've still got 200 jars in your cellar and you've lost a week. A man who can only win always says yes. Old Bear works his jaw, spits in his palm, and holds out his one enormous hand, and I shake it, and the system chimes. First supplier secured, high chum units. Merchant rank F, namitam chum. But a brand isn't jars and a handshake. A brand is a face, a feeling, a story told well enough that a stranger 200 miles away feels something holding the jar. And I can't draw a straight line. So I go find Mia. She's at the diner, wiping down tables that have no customers to dirty them, in a room her family has been slowly losing for years. Sullivan's used to feed the whole mine. Now it feeds a handful of old men nursing single cups of coffee, and the Sullivans are drowning as quietly and completely as everyone else on this mountain. I sit at the counter and put it to her straight. I need a brand. A real one, a name, a label, a look, photographs, the whole feeling of a place in a single jar. You're the only person in this town who can make something people want to look at. I've seen the sketchbook, Mia. The one under the counter. She goes still. You haven't seen anything. The mountains at the snow line. The old mine. Your dad's hands around a coffee cup. I've seen it. I have, in fact, seen far more, the work she never got to make in my first life, the talent this town quietly crushed. Here's the offer, and hear all of it before you say no. Not a wage. 10% of the whole thing. Ownership. You design the brand and you own a piece of the brand forever, no matter how big it gets. She laughs, then sees I'm not joking, and the laugh dies. Leo. 10% of a honey stand. That's 10% of a card table in a parking lot. 10% of what it's going to become. I hold her eyes. I think you're the best artist this mountain ever made. I think you've spent your whole life being told that doesn't matter here, because here nothing matters, because here everything dies. I'm telling you this one thing isn't going to die. Draw me something true, Mia. Draw the mountain the way you actually see it, and let the whole world find out about you at the same moment it finds out about the honey. She's quiet a long, long moment, looking for the trick in it. Then she reaches under the counter and brings out the sketchbook, turns to a clean page, and that's the moment the brand is born, though neither of us says so out loud. What she draws in 3 clean strokes is the snow line at dawn over the high meadow, the exact place the impossible honey comes from, with the words hollow pine beneath it, simple and strong, like a promise being made. It's better than anything Sterling Foods will ever pay a city agency 6 figures to produce. I know because in my first life I saw what they paid for, and it never once looked like this. And then I tell her the part that matters just as much. I need real photographs too, not catalog shots, the truth. The snow line. Bear's hands on the comb. Steam off a cup at your dad's counter. I nod at the battered camera bag behind the register, the one I know is hers, the one I remember. That DSLR your uncle left you. Dust it off. People are about to start buying photographs of a feeling, Mia, and you take the best ones on this mountain. Partnership formed. Brand identity established. Silver Tongwe active. Now I need the one thing a speech and a label can't give me. A real buyer at a real price. That proves the whole thing is true. And I know exactly who. Her name is Grace Lynn, and right now, in this year, she's nobody. A woman with one small high-end grocery in the city, good taste, no money, and a deep, weary distrust of slick salesmen. But I know her. In my first life, Grace Lynn became one of the most respected specialty food buyers in the country, the woman who could make a small producer's whole career with a single order, before Sterling Foods undercut and crushed her too. Right now, she's exactly what I am, talented, broke, and waiting for the one break the gatekeepers will never give her. I take the bus down to the city with a single crate of hollow pine and Mia's label, and I walk into Grace Lynn's shop, and I don't pitch her like a 17-year-old. I pitch her like a man who has studied her entire career, because I have. I know she hates being talked at, so I don't talk. I open a jar, set a clean spoon beside it, slide it across her counter, and say nothing at all. She gives me a flat look. She's been worked by salesmen her whole life, and then, to call my bluff, she tastes it. I watch her stop. Watch her taste it again, slower. Watch a buyer who tries 1,000 things a month meet something she wasn't prepared for. Where is this from? She says quietly. A town 2 hours up the mountain that no one's heard of. 200 families. Snowline hives, the only bees at that altitude in the region. No middleman in the chain, you'd buy direct from the co-op, from the people who keep the bees. I let it settle, then give her the thing I know she's been starving for. I know you've spent years trying to find clean, traceable, single-origin supply, miss. Lynn and the big distributors won't give it to you because there's no margin in honesty for them. I can. I can give you a story your customers will pay anything for, and I can give it to you before anyone else in this city even knows it exists. She looks at me a long moment, this woman who'll one day be powerful and right now is just tired and sharp and waiting. You're young to talk like that. I had to grow up fast, I say, which is the truest thing I've told anyone in this life. How much? 90 a jar to you. You shelf them at 140 and they'll be gone in a week, and your customers will think you're a genius for finding them. And when they ask where you found it, I lean in just slightly. You tell them you found it first. Because you did. She buys 200 jars on the spot. $18,000. The system detonates with light. Sale, 10,000 $. Quest complete, earn 10,000 $. Merchant rank, FD. Skill unlocked, market sense, perceive demand trends before they break. New quest, cut out the middleman permanently. Secure the supply. I carry that check up the mountain like it's spun from glass. That night, we eat like a family that suddenly remembered how. My father keeps picking the check up off the table and setting it back down as if it might evaporate. Lily, my little sister, 12 small for her age, with the cough that gets worse every single winter and the good inhaler we ration because the medicine that works costs money we've never had, asks, around a mouthful of bread, if we're rich now. And my father laughs. A real laugh, deep and surprised, the first I've heard in this whole second life, and he says, "Not yet, Lilybug. But your brother seems to have lost his mind in a very useful direction. Mia's there because she's part of this now, part of us, the way I'm quietly making sure she always will be." And when Lily coughs hard enough to bend over the table, and my father's face tightens with the old helpless fear, I say it without thinking. We'll get her to the specialist in the city. Soon. The one who can actually fix it. We can afford it now. The table goes quiet. My father looks at me. Because in my first life, we never could afford it. In my first life, there was a winter the cough became something we couldn't stop, and I've spent 2 lifetimes not letting myself remember that hallway. Under the table, Mia's hand finds mine and holds on, and neither of us looks at the other, and it's the warmest I've been in 2 lives. Soon, Lilybug, I say again, and I mean it like a vow because it is one. School the next morning still has Brett Hale in it. He finds me at the lockers because money makes some men generous and makes Brett Hale need an audience to feel real. "Heard your daddy's running a little honey charity at the city markets," he says, loud, for the hallway. My dad says it's cute. Says towns like ours are already dead and the smart move is to sell to people like him before the lights go out. You should pass that along to your old man. In my first life, this boy made me feel 2 inches tall, and I carried it for 20 years. Now I just look at him and feel a distant, almost gentle pity, and that, the total absence of fear in my face, unsettles him more than anything I could say. "Your dad runs Hale Distribution," I say pleasantly, closing my locker. "Trucks, cold storage, the only freight contract to the city markets for 300 miles. Good business, Brett. Built entirely on being the only road off this mountain." I shoulder my bag. Funny thing about being the only road, though. The day somebody builds a second one, you stop being essential and start being the long way around. Tell your dad Leo Hart said hello. He has no idea what I mean. He will. The first retaliation comes from Mueller, because small predators move before big ones notice there's prey. He can't lower his price. The whole town has seen the city number now, so he poisons the well. Word goes around the mountain. The Hart boy is a con artist. The city money was a one-time fluke. The fad will die by spring, and when it does, Mueller will be the only buyer left, and anyone who shipped with the boy will be frozen out. He leans hardest on the families with the deepest debts and the least room to gamble. And it works on 3 of them, 3 families, terrified, who quietly load Mueller's truck the next week at $4 a jar, just to be safe. It's a good move. In my first life, fear like that always won on this mountain. So I call a town meeting in the square in the cold, and I don't argue with the fear. You can't argue someone out of being afraid. You can only give them something heavier to hold. "Mueller's telling you I'm a fad," I say, breath steaming, the whole town wrapped in coats and gathered close. Maybe he's right. So don't bet your family on me. Here's what I'm actually offering instead. Something that doesn't need you to trust me at all. A co-op. Every family that joins pools their harvest under one name, Hollow Pine. We sell direct to the city, together, as one, and we cut Hank Mueller out of the chain completely and forever. You keep 90% of the real price, the one you've all seen now. I take 10 to run the thing, and here's the part that matters. I only get paid when you get paid. If the family doesn't make money, I don't make money. I look around at faces I've known across 2 lifetimes. Mueller offered you $4 and a threat every winter for 20 years. I'm offering ownership and the real number. Don't trust me. Trust the check in Old Bear's pocket. Trust the look on Tom Hart's face this week. Trust your own eyes. Old Bear stands up first, slow and enormous. I'm in. Got the boy's honey money in my coat to prove he's not lying. Then the Sullivans. Then, after a held breath, a dozen more families. And then it isn't a trickle, it's the whole square standing up at once. Because hope with a real number attached is, finally, louder than 20 years of fear. Hollow Pine Siop founded Bomibay families. Merchant rank D, Bay Misfancham. Supply secured. Intermediary permanently bypassed. Mueller doesn't go quietly. Small predators rarely do. The day after the co-op forms, he drives back up the pass. Not to the square, but house to house, knocking on the doors of families with the deepest debts and youngest children. I hear about it within the hour, and I find him on the Petersons' porch, where Cal Peterson stands in his doorway with 3 kids behind him and the old fear all over his face, and Mueller is leaning in close, warm, and reasonable the way a man is warm when he's frightened. $5 a jar, Cal. Guaranteed. Cash, today. Not some boy's promise about city people who'll forget this town by summer. When the fad dies, I'll be the only buyer left, and I'll remember who stayed loyal. Think about your kids. He's offering 5, I say, climbing the porch steps, because last week he offered everyone 4. That's what I'm worth to him now, Cal. A $1 raise, bought with fear, the week after I proved his scale was rigged. The co-op got you 90 a jar from a real buyer, paid this week, in writing. Mueller's whole pitch is that you should be afraid of the future. I'm telling you to look at the check Old Bear already cashed. Cal looks at me, then at Mueller, then at his 3 kids, and he closes his door gently in Hank Muller's face. By nightfall, the story of the porch has run through every kitchen on the mountain, and the last 3 wavering families signed the co-op book the next morning. The first weeks of the co-op are not glory. Their work, the unglamorous, back-breaking, midnight kind. We turn Old Bear's barn into a packing house. Plank tables, straw for cushioning, a system for tracking which family's jars go in which box. I teach men who farmed their whole lives how to seal a parcel so a glass jar survives 200 miles of bad mountain road, and we lose the first dozen boxes to breakage and learn from every cracked jar. Martha Bear runs the labeling line with the precision of a woman who raised 6 children and won't tolerate a crooked sticker. Mia's photographs, shot on that dusted-off DSLR, the snow line and the old man's hands, go on to every box so the thing arriving at a stranger's door doesn't feel like a shipment. It feels like a letter from a mountain. But growing too fast is its own danger, and I nearly learn it the hard way. With grace reordering and demand climbing, 1 week a batch goes out that isn't right. A newer family, overwhelmed, stretches their honey by blending in cheaper valley honey to hit quota, and 3 jars ship before Old Bear catches the off smell. In my first life, I watched a dozen small brands die exactly here, at the moment success tempts them to cut the one corner that's the whole point. So I do the hardest thing a young business can do. I stop the line. I recall the batch at my own cost, refund the customers with a handwritten note, and call an emergency co-op meeting. We almost just killed it, I tell them, holding up a bad jar. Not Sterling, not Hale, not Mueller. Us. The second we put pure snow honey on a label and then cut it, we become the exact thing city people are running away from. The whole price, the whole reason a jar's worth 140 instead of 4, is that it's true. The day it stops being true, we're just Mueller with a prettier sticker. The family who cut the corner stares at the floor, ashamed, and I make my next words for them, not against them. Nobody's getting thrown out. I should have set the standard before the pressure hit. That's on me. So here's the standard now, and we write it together that night. Every jar traceable to a family and a hive, random testing, no blending, no exceptions, the whole co-op's name riding on the weakest member's honesty. Quality standard established. Brand integrity protected. Merchant rank D, Tamitam Pancham. It cost me $2,000 and a hard week. It's the best money I spend all year, because a year from now, when a giant comes looking for any crack to pry us apart with, there won't be one. And I know, better than anyone alive, that they will come. And then the co-op finds its rhythm. And for the first time in either of my lives, I get to watch a thing I built simply work. Grace Lynn sells through her 200 jars in 9 days and calls for 400 more, and then she asks, almost shyly, whether we have anything else, anything at all from that mountain, because her customers have started asking for the Hollow Pine people by name. A restaurant in the city, a good one, puts in a standing order for the honey to drizzle over a dish they charge $30 for. None of this exists yet on a screen. It's all phone calls and faxed invoices and checks in the mail, the slow machinery of business in this year, and somehow that makes each win feel more solid in my hands. The little photo app does its quiet work too. Mia posts the mountain on it the way I asked. The snow line at dawn, Bear's cracked hands on the comb, steam curling off a cup at her father's counter, and where a glossy ad would bounce off people, these don't. A few hundred followers become a few thousand. A woman in a city 2 states away comments that the photo of the comb made her cry and she doesn't know why, and orders 3 jars. I stand in the barn reading that over Mia's shoulder on her boxy laptop, and I think, there it is. The whole next decade in one stranger's sentence. People are about to start buying feelings, and we're the only ones on the mountain who know it. You're smiling like you know a secret, Mia says, not looking up from the screen. I always know a secret, I say, and she laughs, and for a moment, the barn is just warm lamplight and the smell of honey and a girl laughing, and I let myself have it, because I've learned the hard way that the work is never the point. The lamplight is the point. The work is just how you keep the lamp lit. The families feel it too. Hal Peterson, who almost loaded Mueller's truck out of fear, pulls me aside one evening with his weekly co-op check folded in his fist and can't quite find the words, and finally just says, "My kids ate meat twice this week, Leo. Twice." I haven't done that in 3 winters, and he walks off fast so I won't see his face. That, not the orders, not the system, not the number climbing toward 10,000 and past it, is the thing I came back for. I just didn't know it yet on the morning I woke up. Hank Mueller drives down the mountain that week with an empty truck for the first time in 20 years. He does not come back. And the town watches his taillights vanish down the pass in a silence that slowly, house by house, turns into something this place hasn't felt in a generation, something it takes them a moment to even recognize. It feels like a town that has just, for the first time in living memory, stopped being robbed. I'm standing in the square watching that empty truck disappear when a long black car I don't recognize climbs the pass and stops at the edge of the square. A man steps out in a coat worth more than my father's truck, looks at our hand-painted co-op sign with a small, amused smile, and says, "I'm looking for the Heart Boy. Name's Gerald Hale." I think it's time you and I had a talk about how things actually get off this mountain. And I smile because I've been waiting for this man since the morning I woke up 17. Mr. Hale, I say, come in out of the cold. I was hoping you'd come. Gerald Hale buys me a coffee in Sullivan's Diner and offers, with a warm fatherly smile, to bury me. He's a different animal than Mueller. Mueller was a flea, greedy, small, easy to crush. Gerald Hale is a wolf in a good suit, and he's run this region's veins for 30 years. He sits across from me in the dying diner, stirs sugar he won't drink into coffee he won't taste, and studies me the way I study a jar of honey. "You've done a clever thing, son," he says. Genuinely. Cutting out Hank Mueller, I've wanted that flea gone for years. But Mueller was never the real gate. He was just the man at the bottom of the mountain. He spreads his hands, reasonable. The real question isn't who buys your honey. It's how it gets to the city at all. The trucks. The cold storage. The shelf space in every store that matters for 300 miles. I own all of it. Every road your goods would travel goes through Hale distribution. So have your little co-op, your pretty label, your 200 families. But without me, none of it moves an inch off this mountain. So what's the offer? I ask, because there's always an offer. Hale Distribution buys the Hollow Pine brand. Outright. Name, label, co-op contracts, the lot. He names the number slowly, watching my face. $40,000. 40,000. Almost exactly my father's bank debt. He's done his homework. He knows, to the dollar, the number that would make a desperate family weep with relief, that turns a foreclosure into salvation overnight. In my first life, this is precisely how it always ended. The big man arrives, names the figure that solves your most urgent terror, and buys your entire future for the price of your present panic. No, I say. He blinks. The warmth flickers. Son. $40,000. That clears your father's note. You'd be a hero. Take the money. You'll blacklist us the second I say no, I say calmly. Call every retailer in the city. Tell them Hollow Pine product doesn't move through Hale cold storage, doesn't get Hale shelf placement, and any shop that carries us loses your whole catalog. You'll make us untouchable through the entire normal supply chain, so that in 6 months, broke and frozen out, I come crawling back and take 20,000 instead of 40. That's the real shape of this, Mr. Hale. The smiles move one. The blacklists move two. I just like us both honest that I can see to the end of the board. The fatherly warmth drains out, and what's left underneath is older and colder. You're a very well-informed child. I'm just a good guesser. I set down my cup. Run your blacklist. Truly. I'd rather you do it now, while we're small and it costs you nothing but your dignity, than later when it'll cost you a great deal more. Thanks for the coffee. He does exactly what I said. Within days, every retailer in the city that isn't Graceland's one small shop has quietly, apologetically, told us no. Hale has slammed every normal door in the region, all at once. So I stop using doors. We ship direct, I tell the co-op gathered in Old Bear's barn, and I draw it on the wall with charcoal, the mountain, the 200 families, a single bold arrow that leaps clean over the city's stores and lands directly in a customer's hands. No retailers. No Hale trucks. We pack the jars here, mail them straight to the person who's going to eat them, and that person pays us the whole retail price, not 90, the whole 140, because there's nobody left in the middle to take a cut. Gerald Hale owns the road to the stores. Fine. Let him have it. He doesn't own the post office. And he doesn't own this. I hold up the thing this town has never thought to put a price on, a story. Mia's photographs, printed big, Old Bear's one cracked hand lifting a frame of dripping snowline comb, Lily laughing in summer meadow flowers, my father's tired, honest face at dawn. The real mountain, sold to people starving for something true and not even knowing it yet. Half the barn looks at me like I've lost my mind. Sell honey through the mail to strangers off photographs. In this year, a small mountain co-op running its own mail order operation is almost unheard of. But I lived through what's coming. I know that within a few short years, ordering everything online and having it arrive at your door will stop being strange and become simply how the world works, and the makers who learn it first will own the decade. Skill market sense, direct-to-consumer demand wave detected, years ahead of competitors. Quest, reach more home direct customers. Reward, merchant rank C, skill brewmaster. It's slow for the first month. Setting up the mail order forms, the simple website I build off a template because I remember roughly how, teaching families who've never shipped a parcel how to box a jar. There are nights I sit in the barn until 2 in the morning with Mia, the two of us hand labeling boxes by lantern light, and she falls asleep against a stack of finished crates, and I put my coat over her shoulders and keep working in the cold, and I think, this is what the money's actually for, not the empire. This barn, this lantern, this girl who gets to keep her dreams. The empire's just the wall I'm building around it. And then it stops being slow. Mia's photographs do exactly what I knew they would. People don't buy honey, they buy the snow line at dawn, they buy the old man's cracked hands, they buy the feeling of knowing exactly where their food was born. And here is where I make a move no one else in this year would think to make. There's a brand new photo sharing app. Barely anyone's heard of it. A few 100,000 users, mostly kids posting filtered snapshots of their lunch. In my first life, I watched that exact app become the single most powerful selling tool on earth for anything beautiful and small and real. So while every other business in this year is ignoring it as a toy, I have Mia put the mountain on it, the snow line, the comb, the steam off a cup at the diner, and I tell her, post the truth every day. This little app is going to matter more than you can possibly imagine. The food bloggers find us first because this is the golden age of food blogs, and a single honey jar photographed on a snowy windowsill is exactly the kind of thing that travels. One blogger with a real following writes 3 sentences about honey that tastes like a place she's never been and aches to go. She links the little website. And the orders come from the city, then from cities I've never set foot in, from people who saw one photograph and felt the exact thing I knew an entire generation was about to start feeling. The hunger for something real, something with a place and a face, in a world about to go flat and synthetic and false. Mot com customers reached. Merchant rank, DC. Skill unlocked, brewmaster. New product lines now viable, aged cheese, fermented goods, herbal infusions. The wait list itself becomes a kind of magic. In this year, before everything is instant, before next day shipping trains people to expect everything now, telling a customer the bees are working as fast as they can, you'll have your jar in 6 weeks doesn't drive them away. It does the opposite. The waiting makes the honey feel rare, earned, real, and people screenshot their order confirmations and post them on the little photo app like trophies. I remember a future where scarcity becomes the most valuable marketing on earth, where people line up overnight for things on purpose, and I lean into it a decade early. We never make quite enough, and we never apologize for it, and the wanting becomes part of what they're buying. Mia, meanwhile, has quietly become the reason the whole thing has a soul. She spends a week up at the snow line in the cold with that old DSLR, and the photographs she brings back stop me where I stand. The comb held up against a white sky, the light coming through the honey like stained glass, my father's hands and Bear's one hand side by side on a frame. They aren't product shots. They're portraits of a place that spent 100 years being told it was worthless, finally being looked at by someone who could see it. I tell her so, and she goes quiet, and then she says, nobody's ever paid me for these. People here think drawing and taking pictures is a thing you grow out of. People here were wrong about a lot of things, I say, starting with this whole mountain. And I watch her decide right there to stop apologizing for the one thing she was put on earth to do, and that, more than any sale, is a thing I came back to fix. Brewmaster is the key to the second treasure I remember sitting unused in this town. Behind the old mine in the limestone, there are natural ice caves, cold, humid, perfectly stable year-round. In my first life, a celebrated cheesemaker discovered cave aging in caves exactly like these, years from now, and built a luxury brand on it. We have the caves already, and milk from hill farms nobody can sell, going to waste every week. I show Old Bear's wife, Martha, how to wax the wheels and set them in the cave, Brewmaster correcting every mistake in my head before my hands can ruin a batch. The humidity, the turning, the rind. 90 days later, we pull the first wheel out of the dark, cut it, and the system appraises the wedge at a number that makes Martha sit down in the snow. Appraisal, hollow pine cave aged. Grade A+. True value, $1 per wedge. Snow pear wine comes next, from orchard fruit that used to fall and rot, and it nearly doesn't because the first 2 batches turn to vinegar until Brewmaster walks me through the fermentation a step at a time. When we finally pull a cork on a bottle that worked, the whole co-op crowds the barn to taste it, and the room goes quiet, and Old Bear says, well, I'll be damned, which from him is a standing ovation. Mountain herb tea after that, from wild plants the towns walked past for 100 years. Mia designs a tin that looks like the mountain at dusk. Every single thing this place throws away, the system reveals as treasure, and the decade I carry tells me, to the season, exactly when each one will be wanted. With four products now: honey, cave cheese, snow pear wine, mountain tea. I make the move that the future taught me prints money. I stop selling jars and start selling occasions. A hollow pine winter gift box. One of everything the mountain makes, nestled in wood wool, wrapped in Mia's snowline artwork, with a hand-numbered card that says which family kept the bees and aged the cheese. I remember a decade in which curated gift boxes and subscription crates become a multi-billion-dollar habit, in which people pay a premium not for a product but for the feeling of giving something real. And right now, in this year, almost no one is doing it. So we do. I price the box at a number that makes Old Bear choke on his coffee, and I release a strictly limited run for the holidays, because I also know that scarcity plus a deadline is the oldest accelerant there is. The boxes sell out in 4 days. Then they sell out again when we make more. The orders come with notes. This is for my mother. She's never been anywhere. My husband grew up in a mountain town like this. I don't have family this year, and I wanted something that felt like home. I read a stack of them one night in the barn and have to stop because I built this to beat Sterling and clear a debt. And somewhere along the way, it became a thing that arrives on a stranger's doorstep and makes them feel less alone. The system chimes, but quieter, like it knows it's not the point. Seasonal gift line, sold out. Margin per box, exceptional. Town fund, growing. And then I make the move that turns a beloved little brand into a national name, because I'm the only person alive who knows it's coming. I remember that in a couple of years, a food television host, right now a rising star on a cable cooking network, soon to be the most trusted palate in the country, is going to do a series on forgotten American foodways, hunting for exactly the kind of small, rooted, real producer the whole culture is about to fall in love with. In my first life, a different town got that episode, and it minted them. This time, I know the host's name, I know the network, and I know what they're looking for before they fully know it themselves. So I don't wait to be discovered. I have Mia cut together a story, not a sales pitch, a story, the snow line and the old man's hands and the town that refused to die. And I get it, through Grace Lynn's growing connections, onto the right producer's desk at the right moment. I just make it impossible to find a better example of the thing they're already searching for. The host comes up the mountain in early spring with a small crew. She tastes bear's honey straight from the comb, standing in the snow, and the look on her face isn't for the camera. She films Martha pulling a wheel from the ice cave. She films my father's paid-down honey money buying winter coats that fit. She films a town that came back from the dead because that's the truest story on the mountain, and I made sure it was the one standing in her path. The episode airs to the whole country. National demand event predicted. Order volume surging. Merchant rank CB. We sell out of everything, a year's production gone in a week, and start a wait list that becomes its own story. The mountain honey so wanted you have to wait for the bees. Overnight, Hollow Pine stops being a clever co-op and becomes a name people in cities 2,000 miles away say like they know it. The town fund swells. 3 families come off the leave list and stay. And I stand in the packing barn watching boxes go to every corner of the country and understand that I've just done, in a year and a half, with a mountain everyone wrote off, the exact thing Sterling Foods took my whole first life to do with my stolen idea, except this time the name on it is ours, and the money flows uphill to no one. Which is, of course, exactly the moment a giant notices you. So before the giant arrives, I do the unglamorous thing that foresight makes obvious and that no one else in this year would think to bother with. I secure the foundation. The snow-lined meadows where bears' hives sit, the only land at that altitude where these bees can live, the literal source of the whole brand, are owned, on paper, by nobody in particular. Old grazing parcels, decades of unpaid back taxes, titles so tangled that no one has ever cared to sort them, because until 18 months ago the land was worth exactly nothing. I remember a future where a company buys the ground out from under a small producer and then simply owns the source forever. So I spend a slow, boring month and a chunk of the co-op's first real profit clearing the titles and buying the Snowline parcels outright. Not for me, but into the co-op's collective name, locked the same way the brand is, unsellable, without a unanimous vote. The day I finish, I stand at the tree line looking up at the white meadows that are now, finally, permanently the town's own, and I feel something settle in my chest. Let Sterling come. They can copy a label and undercut a price, but they cannot buy a mountain that already belongs to the people who kept its bees. I have learned the hard way in another life that you never truly own a thing until you own the ground it grows from. And in the middle of all of it, the orders, the caves, the empire rising in a barn, I do the one thing that actually matters. The thing this whole second life is secretly for. I take Lily to the city. The specialist whose name I memorized too late in my first life, the one I found only after the winter I couldn't stop, sees her in a bright, clean, warm office, listens to her breathe, runs the tests we could never once afford. I pay the bill in full in cash and it doesn't even empty the box. He gives her the real treatment, the inhaler that actually works, a plan, a future. And then he says, mildly, almost in passing, that we caught it in good time, that another bad winter untreated could have turned dangerous. Could have. In this life, could have. I leave the room. I stand in the bright hospital hallway, and Mia, who insisted on coming, follows me out and doesn't ask anything, just stands beside me with her shoulder against mine, while a man who's died once shakes apart very quietly in a corridor his little sister can't see. Because in one life, this exact hallway is where I lost her, and in this one, I bought it back with honey money and a second chance I did nothing to deserve. You keep doing that, Mia says softly after a while. Knowing things before they happen. Caring about each thing like you've already lost it once. Maybe I have, I say. She looks at me a long moment, this girl who's known me since we were 6, and she doesn't push. She just takes my hand, and this time, in the bright hallway, she leans her head on my shoulder and stays there, and the future bends another quiet degree towards something worth living all the way through. Gerald Hale does not take the bypass quietly. When his blacklist fails, when he realizes we're reaching customers directly, mailing jars straight off the mountain, making his entire road irrelevant, he stops being polite and starts fighting dirty. He leans on the regional shipping depot we use, and suddenly our parcels are delayed, sitting for days, some arriving with broken seals. I split shipping across 3 carriers and a depot 2 valleys over he doesn't control, and I document every broken seal because everything Hale touches, I'm quietly building into a case. Then come the bad reviews online, a coordinated wave of them, anonymous, claiming the honey made people sick, a tactic that in my first life could quietly strangle a small maker before anyone knew. But I've prepared. Every real customer gets a handwritten note asking them to share their honest experience. So when the fakes hit, they drown in a flood of real photographs and real names. The smear doesn't just fail, it makes our customers feel personally protective of us. His last dirty move is the ugliest. He sends a man to Old Bear with a private offer. Sell your hives and your honey to Hale alone at a premium and walk away rich while the town gambles. But Old Bear shows up on our porch that evening, having driven the man off his property. Fella offered me more money than I've seen in my life to stab this town in the back, he says flatly. Told him I sold to a thief for 40 years and I'm too old to start selling to a worse one. You watch your back, boy. That family doesn't lose gracefully. I know, I say. Thank you, Bear. Don't thank me. Just don't leave. That's all this town's ever needed from its smart ones. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, I tell him, and his shoulders settle, and he drives home, and I stand on the porch in the cold, thinking that I've just been handed the one thing Sterling Foods could never buy at any price. A town that's decided, family by family, that it belongs to itself. And that's when I decide to stop playing defense. Hale's blacklist, meanwhile, has become the rope around his own neck, because when a powerful man bans a product that people then find a way to buy anyway, first he looks weak and then he looks corrupt. I make sure of the second part. I have Mia document every retailer Hale privately threatened, the dates, the pattern, and I take it not to a courtroom, but to a young, hungry city food writer I remember. A woman who, in my first life, became famous and respected, and is right now nobody, scraping for the one story that'll make her name. The story runs, regional freight baron strong arm stores to crush mountain farmers Kyo-op. It's not a lawsuit. It's worse. It's a narrative, and the city has decided Hollow Pine is the plucky dying town fighting to live, and Gerald Hale is the rich man with his boot on its neck. People buy our honey now as an act of defiance. Brett finds me at school that week, and for the first time in 2 lifetimes, there's no swagger left in him. My dad's losing accounts, he says, somewhere between a threat and a plea. Real ones. Because of you. Because of some honey and the newspaper. Because of what he did to get those accounts in the first place, I say, not cruel about it. It was always going to come due, Brett. I just know what time it is. Tell him to settle with the co-op while he still can. That night, the long black car climbs the pass again. But it's not Gerald Hale who steps out. It's a woman, tailored coat, 2 silent assistants, holding a jar of our honey up to the porch light, turning it slowly, studying Mia's label like a jeweler studying a stone. Her smile when she turns it on me is the practiced, expensive, patient smile of real money, the kind that makes Gerald Hale look like exactly what he is. Leo Hart, she says, reading my name off a slim folder. 18 years old. Snow Honey, Cave-Aged Cheese, a 47 family co-op, a national television segment, a mail-order operation half the industry hasn't figured out yet. Remarkable. Truly, she extends a card, and on it is the logo I've hated across 2 entire lifetimes. My name is Vivian Sterling. I run acquisitions for Sterling Foods. And I think your little mountain is the single most interesting thing I've seen all year. Her smile widens, warm and total and false. Let's talk about your future, Leo. My future, I think, looking at the woman from the company that devoured my last one. You have absolutely no idea who you just drove all this way to meet. At Mims. Sterling, I say, and I smile back, 2 full lifetimes behind it. Come in, out of the cold. I've been expecting you for a very, very long time. I know Sterling Foods better than Sterling Foods knows itself because I spent a decade inside its belly, being slowly and politely digested. I know their acquisition playbook the way I know my mother's face. It runs in 3 moves, and it never varies. Move 1 is the charm. Flatter the founder, dangle a beautiful number, make them feel chosen, so they begin, just begin, to imagine the money as already theirs. Move 2 is the squeeze. Once the founder's dreaming of the number, find the pressure point and lean. Move 3, if charm and squeeze fail, is the kill. Copy the product, crush the original underscale, buy the corpse for pennies. They ran all 3 on me in my first life. I was the deck. I was the idea. I was the corpse they didn't even bother to buy because I came free. This time, I hold the playbook, and they don't know I have it. This time, I've read the last page first. Vivian Sterling sits in my father's small kitchen, and I watch her appraise it. The worn table, the framed photo of my mother, the boxy old television in the corner, the same way I appraise honey, pricing the desperation of the people who live here. And then she opens with move 1, precisely on schedule. You're brilliant, Leo. What you've built at your age from nothing, it's genuinely special. The number she names lands in the little kitchen like a meteor. $2 million. For the brand, the co-op contracts, the recipes. To a family that owed $42,000 a season ago, it's a sum from another planet. A sum that doesn't feel like money so much as a door out of every fear they've ever known. My father, in the doorway, makes a small broken sound. Sterling can take this national. Every store in the country, overnight. You'd never worry again, and your town would have its savior. All you have to do is say yes. It's a generous offer, I say carefully. Can I have a few days to think? Of course, she smiles, certain. They are always certain at this stage. Take all the time you need, within reason. That night, Move 1 does exactly what it was designed to do, not to me, but to my father. He waits until Lily's asleep, then sits across from me at the worn table where my mother used to roll dough, folds his cracked hands, and says carefully, Leo, $2 million. He says it like a foreign word he's afraid to mispronounce. Son, I've broken my back on this mountain 40 years and never seen 2,000 at once. The note would be gone. Lily's whole future paid for. We could just be safe. For the first time. Why would we say no to safe? And here's the hardest thing I do in this entire second life. Harder than facing down Mueller, harder than Sterling. I look my exhausted father in the eye and refuse to give him the thing he's begging me for. Because it isn't safe, Dad, I say gently. It feels safe. That's the trick. It's built to feel like rescue. But I've seen what happens after. They buy the brand, keep the name, move the honey to a factory, squeeze the co-op contracts until every family that trusted me is right back where Mueller had them. Except now they don't even own their own name. The 2 million goes to us, and the mountain goes back to being poor, and in 5 years Hollow Pine is a label on a shelf that has nothing to do with this place. I put my hand over his. I know it makes no sense that I know that, but I do. Trust me the way you trusted me that first morning when you didn't sell to Mueller. One more time. He looks at me a long moment, this man alive in this kitchen, and something settles in his face. You've never once been wrong, he says slowly. Not since that morning. Not once. He grips my hand. All right, son. All right. I call a co-op meeting the next day because the families have heard the number too. In a town this size, $2 million is a sound that travels through walls, and I owe them the truth, not a decision made over their heads. I lay it all out, the offer, what I believe it really means, and the fact that, because of how I wrote the contracts, I can't sell it without all of them anyway. It's not my choice alone. It was never going to be. That's on purpose. So I'm asking, not telling. Do we take a giant's money and go back to being its supplier, or do we bet on ourselves and own this thing forever? Old Bear stands up first, the way he always does now. I sold to Mueller for $4 for 40 years because I was scared. I'm done being scared. I'm with the boy. And the barn votes, hands rising one after another, to turn down $2 million. 47 families who a year ago couldn't pay their winter notes, choosing ownership over rescue. I've never been prouder of anything in 2 lives. She should not have given me a few days. Because while she waits for the founder to start dreaming of the money, move one, working exactly as designed, I spend those days doing the thing she can't imagine an 18-year-old would think to do. I lock every door before she can walk through it. The trademark on Hollow Pine, I file it the next morning nationally in the co-op's collective name. I've been quietly preparing the paperwork for weeks because I remember Sterling's favorite trick is to register your own name out from under you during the friendly negotiation, then sue you for using the name you built. Too late. It's ours, locked, federal, untouchable. The recipes, the cave aging method, the sourcing maps, the wine, I don't patent because a patent is a public document and a public document is a gift to a giant. Instead, I keep them as trade secrets, split deliberately across 47 families, so no single person, no single notebook holds the whole thing. You can't acquire what lives in 40 kitchens and one old man's memory. The co-op contracts, I rewrite them so the brand can't be sold to anyone without a unanimous vote of all 47 families. I make myself, on purpose, legally incapable of selling them out, even if Sterling's number someday grows large enough to tempt me. When they come to buy the founder, they'll find the founder can't deliver the company alone. That's the entire point. In my first life, I was always the single point they bought. And the supply chain, the mail order engine, the customer list, the story, the photographs, I own outright with Mia, and it routes clean around every store and cooler and truck that Sterling or Hale controls. By the time Vivian Sterling drives back up expecting a grateful yes, I've quietly turned Hollow Pine into the one thing her 3-move playbook has no answer for. A company that can't be bought, can't be copied, and can't be starved. I've thought about it, I tell her, in the same kitchen. Thank you, truly. But no. Move 2 arrives right on time. The warmth goes out of her face like a switch. Leo, let me be very clear about your situation. Sterling can launch a wild snow honey line next quarter. National scale, a tenth of your price, every shelf in the country. We'll spend more on marketing in a week than your town earns in a decade. We'll make Hollow Pine a quaint forgotten label that a big, friendly, trustworthy brand kindly improved upon. Or you take the 2 million, clear that debt, save your father's face, and become part of the family. The number goes down every day you make me wait. You'll copy us, I agree, calmly. Build a cheaper version in a factory and bury the original under scale. That's move 3. You skipped to it because I said no to move 2 before you'd finished making it. Her eyes narrow. She's never heard her own machine described back to her. Here's the flaw. You can copy a recipe. You can't copy a true story. And the entire value of this category, a category your company doesn't even understand exists yet, is the story. The morning you launch a factory Snow Honey, I release one photograph, your industrial line beside Old Bear's one cracked hand on a real comb on a real mountain. You won't be the big friendly brand that improved us. You'll be the corporation that faked a mountain. I'll turn your scale into your humiliation in a single image. And I know exactly how that plays out. The headlines, the backlash. Because I've watched your company do this before to people who couldn't fight back. I know your playbook better than your own board does. For the first time, Vivian Sterling looks at me not as a clever child, but as something she can't place, and is, just slightly, afraid of. Who are you? She says quietly. I'm the one who's been waiting for you, I say. Drive safe down the pass. The ice gets bad after dark. That night, I don't sleep. Not from fear, from preparation. I sit at my mother's kitchen table with a legal pad and I write out, from memory, every move Sterling is about to make, in order, with the counter move beside each one, the way I used to plan operations in a life this woman will never know about. The factory copycat product, countered by the trademark and the photograph I'll release. The price war, countered by the fact that we sell a story, not a commodity, and you cannot factory farm a story. The poaching of my families, countered by contracts and by a town that has learned the hard way what loyalty is worth. The manufactured crisis, countered by lab certs already notarized and waiting in a drawer. I fill 4 pages. By dawn, I have a map of the next 6 months, because I've already lived something close enough to it, and the only thing Sterling has that I don't is money. And money, I've learned across 2 lives, is just the last argument of people who've run out of better ones. When the sun comes up over the snow line, I make coffee and I feel almost sorry for Vivian Sterling, walking into a fight where her opponent has already read the ending. She doesn't give up. People like her never give up. They escalate. And I know that when Charm and Squeeze fail, Sterling's Move 3 has a dirty variant they don't put in any deck. Manufacture a crisis, make the small producer look dangerous, then ride in as the trustworthy national brand. Before the scare, though, she tries the quieter parts, and I let her, because every move she wastes is time I use. First, Sterling tries to poach. An executive quietly contacts individual co-op families with private contracts at double our internal rate, the classic split the coalition play. But the families have been split-tested by Mueller and Hale already. Cal Peterson forwards me the offer with one word, nope. Then they try the press. A glossy food magazine Sterling advertises in runs a sour little piece questioning whether boutique mountain co-ops can guarantee safety at scale, planting the first seed of doubt. But I've built exactly the armor. I have Mia publish a clean public page. Every jar, every test, every family, every date. Radical transparency against manufactured doubt, and the seed never takes root. And when charm and doubt both fail, Sterling reaches for the dirty variant. And I'm ready, because I've been ready for weeks, when a regional health inspector arrives at the barn unannounced, responding to an anonymous complaint to test our honey and cheese for contamination. I welcome him in. I offer him coffee. Because months ago, the day market sense flagged the risk, and my memory confirmed it. I had every product independently lab certified, the results notarized, dated, public. I have the cave's temperature logs, every hive's records, every jar traceable. The inspector spends 3 hours looking for a problem and finds the cleanest small batch operation he's ever set foot in. He says so in writing and leaves embarrassed. And the anonymous complaint. Mia traced where the call came from the moment it landed. A phone number registered to a consultant on Sterling Foods' regional payroll. I don't go to court. I go back to my food writer. The story runs, and this time it goes national. Food giant caught faking a safe IT scare against a mountain co-op it failed to buy. It detonates in Sterling's hands exactly the way their schemes should have detonated in my first life and never did, because nobody knew the playbook, and now somebody does. The city, already in love with Hollow Pine, is furious on its behalf. Sales triple in a week out of pure spite. Vivian Sterling stops returning calls. And Gerald Hale, who, scenting the wind, quietly bet his struggling distribution company on backing Sterling's regional play, certain the giant would crush us and reward him with the freight. Gerald Hale is suddenly and publicly tied to a disgraced national scheme. His retailers flee. His bank stops being patient. The man who owned the only road off the mountain watches it empty beneath him. Brett doesn't come to school the week the bank calls his father's loans. Gerald Hale comes to me himself in the end. Not in the long black car this time, in an ordinary truck, alone, no assistance, the expensive coat looking a little loose on him now. He finds me in the tasting room, the old mine office I turned into something alive, and stands in the doorway like a man unsure he's allowed in. I came to gloat once, he says, in a dying diner. Offered to buy your whole future for $40,000 and called it generous. I thought towns like this were already dead. Built my whole life on being the only road off a corpse. A dry, exhausted laugh. Turns out the corpse just needed somebody to stop robbing it. I let the silence sit. I've imagined this man's downfall across 2 lifetimes, and now that it's here, I find I have no appetite for cruelty. Cruelty was a first life hunger. You backed Sterling, I say. Bet your company the giant would crush us and hand you the freight. Bet wrong, he meets my eyes. The bank's calling my loans. I've got drivers with families who'll lose their jobs because I was too proud to see what you were building until it was on national television. So, his jaw works, and it costs him everything left in him to say it. I'm not here to threaten you, Hart. I'm here to ask. Is there anything left for Hale distribution on this mountain? Anything at all? And here's where 2 lifetimes of being on the wrong side of powerful men pays off, because I know exactly how this should go, and it isn't revenge. Hollow Pine needs cold storage, I say. Real cold chain, region-wide, so we can ship cheese and wine, not just honey. You have the trucks, the depots, the coolers, the men who know how to run them. We'll lease it. Fair market rate, no exclusivity, a real contract, enough volume to keep your drivers employed and your bank off your neck. I let him absorb that I'm throwing him a rope. Not charity, mister. Hale. Strategy. A town with a working cold chain beats a town that won a grudge. And a man who owes his recovery to the co-op he tried to bury never bites it again. He stares at me a long moment, this wolf in a loosening coat, and something breaks and resettles in him into something smaller and more honest. Why, he says. After what I did. Because I've been you, I say, which makes no sense to him and is the truest thing in the room. And because I'd rather own the road than burn it. He takes the deal. Of course he does. It's the only move he has left, and we both understand, without saying it aloud, who the road belongs to now. His drivers keep their jobs. And Gerald Hale spends the rest of his career hauling, at a fair and unremarkable margin, the goods of the mountain town he once swore was already dead. As for Brett, he comes to find me near the end of the school year, and there's nothing left of the boy who leaned on a new car. You could have finished us, he says, almost lost. Why didn't you? Because finishing people isn't winning, Brett, I tell him. It just feels like it for a little while. I learned that the hard way, somewhere you've never been. Your dad's hauling our cheese now. You could do worse than learn the business the honest way this time. And I leave him holding the strange weight of having been forgiven by someone who had no reason to. That winter, the thing I've been quietly building toward under everything else finally rises into the light. Not a product, but the town itself. It starts small, the way real things do. The co-op needs more hands than the founding families have, so we hire, and the first people we hire are the ones who left. A welder who moved 2 valleys over comes home. A young couple who'd packed for the city unpacks instead. The school, down to one combined classroom and counting the months to closure, gets 11 new kids in a season, and the county quietly takes Hollow Pine off the list of towns it had marked to let die. Sullivan's Diner comes back first and brightest, and that one's personal. Mia's family had been losing it by inches, and now the tasting room visitors and the co-op workers fill its booths again, and one afternoon I watch Mr. Sullivan flipped the window sign from closed to open with hands that are shaking, and Mia grips my arm hard enough to bruise, and that's worth more than any number the system has ever shown me. We don't get rich overnight. That's a city fantasy. What happens is slower and better. Roofs get fixed before the snow instead of after. Kids get winter coats that fit. The co-op votes to put a share of every season's profit into a town fund that fixes the road, restocks the clinic, keeps the school's lights on. So the wealth spreads out like meltwater into every house instead of pooling at the top the way it did everywhere I ever worked in my first life. I insist on that part. I've seen, intimately, what happens to a place where all the worth flows uphill to a few men in a tower. I will not build that here. You can watch the town change if you stand in the square long enough. The hardware store reopens. Pete Avers comes back from the city where he'd been laying tile and reopens his father's old shop because suddenly there are roofs being fixed and barns being built and a reason to sell a nail. The diner hires 2 more waitresses. There's a night I walk home late and every window on the main street has a light in it. And I have to stop because in my first life this street went dark house by house until it was a row of black windows and for sale signs nobody answered, and now it glows all the way up the hill. A small thing. The biggest thing I've ever seen. Mia and I have stopped pretending, somewhere in all of it, that we're just business partners. It happens the way real things happen in a small town, not a grand moment, just the slow accumulation of late nights in the barn and shared looks across the co-op meetings and her head finding my shoulder more often than not. One evening on the walk home along the snow, where the streetlights are few and the stars do the rest, she stops and says, "Whatever this is, you knowing things, the way you look at the mountain like you're saying goodbye to it and hello at the same time, I don't need to understand it. I just need to know you're staying." "I'm staying," I tell her, and I mean it with 2 lifetimes behind the word, and she takes my hand, and we walk the rest of the way home not needing to say anything else. In my first life, I let this town and this girl go because I was certain the worth was somewhere else. It took dying to teach me the worth was here the whole time. And then I turned to the thing that will carry Hollow Pine past honey and cheese into something permanent. The old hot spring above the closed mine, the one the town forgot was special, the one I remember a resort chain discovering a decade from now. I have the co-op restore it, simply and beautifully. The boarded-up mine office becomes a tasting room. And on the longest, darkest night of the year, Hollow Pine throws a winter festival. Strings of warm light over the very square where Hank Mueller used to set his rigged scale, 200 families pouring wine and selling cheese to city people who drove 2 hours up a mountain that exactly 1 year ago the entire world had written off as dead. I stand in that glowing square with my father, who hasn't stopped standing up straight since the day the debt cleared, and with Lily, healthy and loud and chasing the lights, and with Mia, whose name is on the brand beside mine. "You knew," my father says quietly, watching the lights and the laughing strangers. Somehow. All of it from that first morning. Like you'd already seen exactly how it would go. "I just believed in the mountain, Dad," I say. The system chimes, softer now, almost gentle. Merchant rank, B. Hollow Pine, national brand. Town revived. Final quest available. They are not finished with you. And they aren't. Because I know, better than anyone alive, that a wounded giant is far more dangerous than a confident one. A confident giant offers you $2 million and a smile. A wounded one, humiliated on national television by a teenager and a co-op, stops trying to buy the mountain at all. It starts, instead, to think about how to simply take it. Somewhere in a glass tower in the city, Sterling Foods is done being polite, and I can feel it coming the way I can feel a storm coming off the peaks. The last move, the worst one, the one that nearly ends everything. Sterling Foods makes its final move in the dead of the next winter, and it's the one I've dreaded since the morning I woke up 17, because it's the move with no clean answer, the one that beat me, in spirit, my entire first life. They stop trying to buy us. Instead, they buy our debt. It's elegant and cruel and exactly what I'd expect from the company that ate my last life. The co-op is strong on sales now, but like every fast-growing thing, thin on cash. We've poured every dollar back into the caves, the spring, the packing line, the festival, the future. And nearly all 47 families still carry their old farm loans, small scattered debts spread across the regional agricultural bank, the loans they took in the bad years just to survive the winters. And Sterling, quietly, through a holding company with a name that means nothing, buys that bank's entire agricultural loan book. In a single afternoon, without a headline, Sterling Foods becomes the lender to nearly every family in Hollow Pine. And then they call the loans, all of them, at once. The letters arrive on the same gray morning, in the same plain envelopes, on 40-some kitchen tables across the mountain, my father's among them. Repay the full balance within 30 days, or forfeit the land. Land that's finally, thanks to everything we built, worth something. That's the point. Sterling doesn't want the honey anymore. They want the mountain itself, the caves, the spring, the brand, the name, and they found the one door I couldn't lock, the one weakness I couldn't engineer away. The family's own old debts, the debts that existed long before I came back. The morning the letters land, the town nearly comes apart. By noon, the barn is full of frightened people, and the fear in the room is the old fear, the Mueller fear, the fear I thought we'd driven down the pass for good, and I realize, with a cold drop in my stomach, that Sterling chose this weapon precisely because it reaches past everything I built and straight back into the thing this town has always known best, the terror of losing the land. Cal Peterson, who shut his door in Mueller's face, stands with the letter shaking in his hand. 30 days, Leo. Full balance. I don't have it. None of us do. Maybe we should have taken the 2 million. At least then we'd have walked away with something. Now they'll take the land and we'll have nothing. A murmur of agreement moves through the barn, low and despairing, and I feel a year of trust starting to crack under the oldest pressure there is. And for one bad moment, standing in front of them, I feel 17 for real, outmatched, a kid who picked a fight with something far too big. Then I remember I've already lived the version of this where I gave up. And I'm not living it again. Look at me, I say, and the barn quiets. A year ago, Hank Mueller stood in our square and told you the same thing this letter is telling you now, that you have no choice, that the powerful man owns you, that the only safe move is to kneel. He was lying then. They're lying now. It's the same lie in a nicer envelope. I hold up the letter. Sterling didn't do this because they're strong. They did it because we beat them 3 times, and this is the only move they have left. This isn't the move of a winner. It's the move of a company that got humiliated by a mountain town and a teenager and can't stand it. They are not foreclosing on us in 30 days. I promise you that. But I need every one of you to hold the line, the way you held your crates that first week, and not sell, not panic, not sign anything they put in front of you. Can you give me 30 days? One more time. It's Martha Bear who answers, before her husband can. We gave you a week once, and you gave us back our whole lives. You'll get your 30 days, Leo. Now tell us what you need. What I need is to build a trap, and I have 30 days to build it. Vivian Sterling calls me herself for the first time in a year, and her voice is calm and final and almost kind. You were clever, Leo. The trademark, the trade secrets, the story. You locked every door I knew how to open. Best defense I've ever seen from someone your age. But you forgot the oldest thing of all. A town is just people, and people owe money. We own the paper now, all of it. In 30 days, we foreclose on the entire valley at once, and Sterling walks away with your caves, your spring, your brand, your precious name, free and clear, for the cost of some old farm loans nobody else wanted. Unless she lets it breathe. Unless you sell me the brand. Now, for a fraction of last year's offer, and I make every one of those loans disappear. Save your neighbors, Leo. Save your father. It's the heroic thing. It's the only thing you can do. In my first life, this is the move with no answer. The giant doesn't beat you on the product or the story or the fight. It beats you on the balance sheet because it can always outspend you, outweight you, and buy the ground out from under your feet while you're busy winning every other battle. But I didn't spend a decade being slowly digested inside Sterling Foods and learn nothing on the way down. You bought distressed agricultural debt through an anonymous shell company, I say slowly, savoring each word, to force a mass foreclosure and seize an appreciating asset, the same quarter you're already under national fire for faking a safety scare against this very same town. A pause. My turn now. Sterling, do you know what that's called when a public company does that? Because I do. And far more importantly, I know exactly which reporter, which regulator, and which member of your own board is going to care a very great deal. Silence on the line. The first real silence I've ever gotten from her. Here's what Sterling forgot. I don't just know their playbook. I know their people. I know that years from now, Sterling Foods Board will oust a senior executive over a reckless headline-making land grab almost exactly like this one. I know which cautious board member leads that revolt because I read about it in detail in my first life in a business article about the company that ruined me. Right now, he's merely a careful director who despises scandal above all things, and I know precisely how to reach him and precisely what to show him. I spend the 30 days not on my knees before the bank and not selling the brand. I spend them building the trap, 3 jaws of it, each a thing the future handed me. The first jaw, I make the quiet foreclosure impossible to do quietly. The food writer again, bigger now, the story picked up nationally within a day. Food giant secretly buoys a mountain town's debt to seize the brand it couldn't buy. It writes itself because it's true and because the whole country already loves Hollow Pine and already watched Sterling get caught lying once. Public fury becomes a wall around the valley no foreclosure can cross without becoming a national disgrace. The second jaw, I take the documented pattern, the failed buyout, the faked scare, the shell company, the mass debt call, to the one regulator I know from the future is hunting exactly this kind of predatory acquisition through debt, and hand him a clean, complete case with a sympathetic victim and a guilty giant. And the third jaw, the one that closes the trap. I reach Sterling's own cautious board member, the future mutineer, and I don't threaten him. I simply show him what this is about to cost the company, the headlines already running, the regulatory case forming, the boycott spreading, the shareholder value bleeding, and let him do the arithmetic I already know the answer to. I'm not fighting Sterling Foods. I've learned across 2 lives that you can't fight a giant head-on and win. So instead, I hand the giant's own board the precise reason and the precise moment to stop its own executive, the only force on earth that actually can. And while I build the trap, the town holds the line, which is the part Sterling never sees coming because it isn't on any balance sheet. In the second week, Sterling's people quietly approach the most frightened families one more time, the panic buyout offer. Sell us your individual loan and your share of the brand now, today, and walk away clean before the foreclosure takes everything. It's the split the herd play, the oldest one there is, and in my first life it would have worked, because frightened people protect themselves first. But this isn't my first life's town anymore. Cal Peterson gets the call and drives straight to the barn to tell me about it in person, furious, before he's even hung up. Martha Bear reportedly tells the Sterling man she's turned down better dressed wolves this year. Old Bear says, to anyone who'll listen at the diner, we don't sell each other out on this mountain anymore. That was the old hollow pine. We buried it with Mueller's scale. Not one family breaks. 47 households, each with everything to lose, each holding the line for the others. A thing no amount of sterling money can buy because it was never for sale. I spent those 30 days living on the phone and the fax machine and the road, driving down the pass at dawn to sit across desks from the regulator, the fund, the food writer, then driving back up at midnight to stand in the barn and tell 47 scared families that the empty pass tomorrow morning will stay empty. There's no app to organize this, no instant anything. It's all handshakes and paper and the slow wait of showing up in person. And somehow that makes the coalition stronger because every family can see me doing it, can see I haven't run. In my first life, I ran. They all knew I ran. This time they watch me stay, night after night, and staying turns out to be the most persuasive argument I have ever made. And the money, because you can't win a debt war with a story alone, comes from the future too. Market Sense has been screaming for months what I already remembered, that the entire premium artisanal food category is about to go vertical, that a wave of investment capital is about to come chasing exactly what we are, and pay anything to get in early. So I take Hollow Pine's books, The Growth, The Margins, The National Story, The Locked Trademark, to Grace Lynn, who's no longer a struggling shopkeeper, but, with a year of my foresight quietly behind her, a rising name with real backers, and to an investment fund I remember will make its whole reputation, a few years from now, on small premium producers exactly like us. They refinance every family's loan out of the shell company's hands in one clean stroke, betting, correctly, on a brand they can see with their own eyes is about to go national. It doesn't come together cleanly. Nothing this big ever does, and Sterling doesn't sit still while I build. On day 22, they nearly break me. Word reaches the fund, through a back channel I later trace straight to Sterling's people, that Hollow Pine is facing regulatory scrutiny and a contamination history, a poisoned half-truth designed to scare the money away at the exact moment I need it. For one long night, the refinance wobbles. The partners stop returning calls, and I sit in the dark barn doing math that doesn't work, feeling the old first life certainty creep back in, that the giant always wins in the end, that I was a fool to think a mountain could beat a tower. Then I remember I'm not fighting blind. I know these people. I know the fund's lead partner is, above all, allergic to being on the wrong side of a story. So at 1 in the morning, I send her everything, the lab certs, the traceability, the expose of Sterling's fake scare, the regulator's open file. I don't argue. I just show her which way the wind is actually blowing, that the scrutiny is on Sterling, not us, that backing Hollow Pine isn't the risk, it's the headline she wants to be attached to. By morning, the refinance is back on, bigger than before, because Grace Lynn has personally vouched for us, and the partner has decided she'd rather be the fund that saved the mountain than the one that got scared off it. On day 25, Vivian Sterling makes her last personal call. No charm left now, just cold. You're spending money you don't have to fight a war you can't win, Leo. Even if you wriggle out of this, Sterling has a longer memory and a deeper pocket than you'll ever have. We'll still be here next year and the year after. You can't outlast us. Nobody can. And here's the thing I've waited 2 entire lifetimes to say to this company, and I say it quietly, almost gently. You're right. I can't outlast you in a fair fight, and I'm not trying to. I don't need to beat Sterling Foods forever, miss. Sterling. I just need to make this one move so expensive, so public, and so legally radioactive that your own board decides you specifically are the problem. I'm not fighting the company. I'm handing the company a reason to stop you. And it already has. A pause. Check with your board member, the careful one. Ask him how he's feeling about the headlines this week. Then ask yourself who's really running out of time. The line goes very quiet. I've just described to Vivian Sterling a thing already happening inside her own building, a thing she can feel under her feet but can't yet see. And for the first time, the fear in the silence is hers. Day 30, the foreclosure deadline, the day Sterling promised to take the whole valley, comes anyway because deadlines don't know they've been beaten. The whole town gathers in the square that morning, not because I asked, but because 47 families can't sit alone in their kitchens waiting to learn if they still own their land. They stand in the cold around the co-op sign. My father, Lily's mittened hand in mine, Mia on my other side, Old Bear and Martha, the Petersons, the returned welder, and they wait for the black cars, for the lawyers, for the men with the papers. The cars don't come. No one comes. The path stays empty all morning, the snow on it unmarked. Because there's nothing left to come for. The debt is paid, the shell company is radioactive, the executive is being quietly removed, and somewhere in a glass tower a careful man has decided hollow pine is a fight his company will simply pretend it never picked. The deadline passes at noon with nothing but wind and waiting, and it takes the town a full minute to understand that the silence is the victory, that the thing they were braced to lose is just, quietly, theirs. Hal Peterson starts laughing first, a disbelieving bark of it, and then it spreads, and then the whole square is laughing and crying, and holding on to each other in the cold 200 people who spent a generation being told what they were worth by men who were lying, standing on land that's finally, permanently, their own. My father puts his arm around me and can't speak. Lily asks why everyone's crying if it's good news, and I tell her, because sometimes good news is so big it comes out the same as sad, Lilybug, and she accepts this with the grave wisdom of a 12-year-old and runs off to chase the other kids through the snow. On day 29, Vivian Sterling was removed from acquisitions, quietly, the way large companies remove the people who've turned into headlines. I knew it the moment it happened because the cautious board member became, that week, just slightly less cautious, exactly as I always remembered he one day would. The land grab died. The foreclosure died. Sterling Foods retreated, for good, from the mountain it could not buy, could not copy, could not scare, and could not seize. I never once beat them with force. I beat them by knowing, better than they knew themselves, exactly who they were always going to be. The $42,000 my father owed, the number that started all of this, that ruled every winter of both my lives, the figure in the second kitchen drawer, clears so quietly, folded into the refinance, that I almost miss the moment it vanishes. My father frames the stamped, paid in full notice and hangs it in the tasting room, directly above the spot where Hank Mueller used to set his rigged scale, and he won't let anyone take it down, and I catch him sometimes just standing in front of it, a man who spent his whole life being told what his work was worth by people who were lying. Sterling Foods sends one last message near the end of spring. Not a threat this time, a letter, on heavy paper, from the office of the very board member I reached, a careful note proposing a partnership. Sterling would distribute hollow pine products nationally, on our terms, with our name, our trademark, our control, and a fee that would make every family on the mountain wealthy. The same company that, in another life, took my idea and my decade and left me with $41, now asking, politely, from weakness, to please be allowed to carry the thing I built under the name I refused to sell. I sit with that letter a long time at my mother's kitchen table. In my first life, this is the moment I dreamed of and never got, the giant coming to me, hat in hand. I always imagined it would feel like victory. It doesn't, exactly. It feels quieter and better. I take the deal, but only the parts that serve the mountain, every protection locked on paper I wrote, with a clause that says the day Sterling tries to move a single jar to a factory, the whole agreement dissolves and the brand walks. Gracelyn reads it over and laughs out loud. You're making Sterling Foods sign a contract that punishes them for being Sterling Foods. Good. Somebody finally should. I never get revenge, in the end. Revenge was a first life hunger, and I left that man on the bus where he died. What I get is better. The company that fed on small makers spends the rest of its days carrying one it could never own, as a junior partner, on a leash held by a town it tried to swallow. Spring comes late to Hollow Pine, the way it always does. And the town that the entire world buried comes all the way back to life. The co-op is 47 families and growing. There's a waiting list now. The caves are full. The hot spring steams under the last of the melting snow, full of city people who paid to be there. The honey Hank Mueller once bought for $4 a jar now ships under a name the whole country knows, at a price that's put new roofs on old houses and sent 3 hollow pine kids toward colleges no family on this mountain could ever have dreamed of. Lily swears, loudly and often, she'll be the 4th. Brett Hale works an honest job 2 valleys over, and I genuinely wish him well, because the not needing to win is its own kind of wealth I never owned in my first life. And the people are the part I came back for, and the part the system never once put a number on. My father stands up straight now, all the time, the way he did in photographs from before my mother died. He runs the honey side of the co-op and teaches the new families how to read the snow line, and the framed paid in full notice on the tasting room wall has become a small local landmark, the thing visitors ask about. Lily is healthy, loud, relentless, top of her class, already announcing to anyone who'll listen which college she'll attend on a scholarship that won't even matter because the town fund will cover it. In my first life, there was a winter I lost her. In this one, she's 13 and furious that I won't let her drive the delivery truck. I would build the entire empire again 10 times over for that one fact alone. Mia's photographs hang in the city now. A real gallery did a show of the hollow pine work, the snow line and the cracked hands and the comb like stained glass, and she stood in that gallery in a dress instead of a diner apron and watched strangers cry in front of pictures of her own mountain. And I stood at the back and watched her, and that was a better evening than any check I've ever cashed. The diner is full again. Old Bear has more honey money than he knows how to spend and keeps trying to give it away. Grace Lynn's one little shop is 3 shops now and climbing, and she calls me sometimes just to say the sentence she could never say to the gatekeepers who shut her out for years. We did it without them. And the town fund quietly does its slow, unglamorous miracle. The road stays plowed, the clinic stays stocked, the school's lights stay on, and the wealth spreads out into every house like meltwater instead of pooling in a tower, exactly the way I swore it would on the night I understood I'd been handed a whole decade and a second chance to spend it right. I'm standing in the square at the spring festival, warm lights strung overhead, Mia beside me with her name hanging in stores across the country, when the system chimes one final time, and the pale blue panel that guided this entire second life unfolds quietly in the warm evening air. Merchant rank, BS. Quest complete. The town that buried you now carries your work to the world. A second life, well built. The rest is yours to live. And then it fades gently for the last time and doesn't come back. And I find, to my own quiet surprise, that I don't need it anymore, because the future it spent 2 years helping me reach has finally, simply, become the present, and the present is good, and a man doesn't need to see the future when he's no longer afraid of it. Lily runs past, healthy and shrieking with laughter, chasing the festival lights with a pack of other kids. My father pours snow pier wine for strangers who drove up a mountain just to taste what this place always quietly was. Old Bear argues happily with the food writer about the proper temperament of bees. Grace Lynn, up for the festival, is laughing at something Martha said. And Mia leans her head against my shoulder and says, softly, you always knew, didn't you? From the very first morning, like you'd already seen exactly how it ends. Maybe I did, I say. But I think I had it wrong the first time. Had what wrong? I look out at the square, the lights, the families, the steam off the spring, the white mountain standing over all of it, finally, after 100 years, seen for what it's worth. In my first life, I clawed my way out of this town as fast as I could, certain it had nothing, certain that worth lived somewhere else, in the city, in the glass towers, anywhere but here. And I gave the best of myself to people who took it and stamped their own names on it, and I died alone on a bus with $41 and no one waiting up for me. In this life, I stayed. I looked at the exact same mountain, the same honey, the same forgotten families, and this time I saw what they were actually worth. And then I made the rest of the world see it too. I thought this place buried me, I say. It didn't. The first time I just left, before it could ever grow into anything. Before I could, I take her hand. This time I stayed. And we made the whole world learn its name. The lights come on all the way up the pass. The same pass where Mueller's empty truck once vanished in defeat, where Sterling's black cars climbed and then retreated, where my father once drove home in the dark with $4.50 and a slump in his shoulders. Home. For the first time in 2 entire lives, actually, finally, home.